will I be able to, person saying to me, will I be able to do everything that I see you do if I come to the Square Principle seminar? And I don't know how I can answer that truthfully without saying probably not, but more related to the fact that I've been doing this virtually every day for 30 years. I mean, that's a long time. That's a lot of experience. Now, somebody else may be doing it for 30 years. I'm not pulling rank on anybody. I'm just saying that generally speaking, that's a long time, and there's a lot of experience, and some of that experience is useful. Some of that experience isn't that useful under certain conditions, but experience plays a part in the skill set. I'm not saying that if you come to the Square Principle, you won't be able to do anything that I'm doing. I'm merely saying that I'm operating everything that I know is being put into these forecasts, including, of course, the main thing, the Square Principle, which is a key factor in understanding what the market's likely going to do under a set of conditions. I also have the reflected wave principle, which many of you here know, and I also have the roadmap principle, which I don't teach. But part of the reason it's not being taught is because of its complexity. It's not easy to simplify. If the really smart can simplify complexity down to simplicity, I'm not able really to do that at this point. I wish I was with the roadmap, but it does have complexity that I'm not able to, in a sense, overcome. Maybe someday I'll see, the flash of light will come and I'll be able to simplify it in some way, but it's far too complicated to teach it in a group fashion and have people leave satisfied that they have something in their grips. The reason a person comes to a seminar is to get an injection, so to speak, of a whole new way of thinking and looking at the markets and have a grasp of that when they leave and say, boy, I can't wait to get home and put this to work and to watch it happen the way that they say it's going to happen and so on. That's what you're there for. The roadmap is got much too much complexity to do that in a 2-day seminar. So I would love to be able to reduce that down to simplicity, like Einstein. I'm not associating myself with Einstein, but I'm saying like Einstein did with E equals mc squared. He saw something, energy equals mass and mass equals energy. So he found this very interesting thing that he later had to reduce, because he was so smart, down to a simple equation. And those equations were there prior to his birth. The universe had those equations. He discovered them. He didn't create them. But discovery is all any of us can do. The greatest piece of art is discovered. It's not created. It's created locally by a human being who puts it together. And I don't mean to take any credit for anybody, a great artist, but everything is discovered. Everything is already here. And people just discover it in bits and pieces or the whole thing. And I feel on my end like I'm at the bits and pieces end of it to a certain extent. Not so much with the Square Principle, but with my later work, the roadmap, because I am not able to reduce it to the great simplicity that a greater mind would be able to do, like an Einstein reducing his beautiful earth-shattering insights, which again were merely discovered, not created, by Einstein. But in order to discover those, he didn't have to go to a physical location on Earth or to a special place. They were already discoverable in his mind and his own efforts towards that discovery. So one thing I would say, which may not have anything to do with today's subject, is you may have mistaken your mind for merely being a mirror for what's happening in front of you. And it is that, but it's so much more. So don't discount the fact that all great discoveries are discovered in someone's mind. They had to, I mean, there are accidental discoveries where people didn't know and they just stumble across something. But when people are searching for a specific thing, the discovery is in the mind. And so the mind is connected to the universe. And because it is connected to the universe, and indeed is a subsequent product of the universe, you have in your grasp something much, much deeper than merely a mirror to events that are passing by in front of you. So this is why I say it's very important to take a look at the observer himself, the mind, its movements, its machinations, and to learn more about that. Not that this is directly related to stock market and commodity markets and so on, but discovery can happen when your mind is tuned to the thing that you're looking at, like a radio, and you pick up signals from that thing. You're really tuning your mind to a specific thing that is indeed emitting truths about itself, because that's what the universe it's in whole is doing. But you have to be tuned into that. And so that tuning, that search, that discovery is what all people are doing when they make the great physicists that come up with incredible God level insights into the nature of the universe. I've brought up Werner Heisenberg so many times, but it's just, and many, many others, Neil Bohr and many, many others. These are particle physicists. These are people who never get to see the very thing that they're figuring out. I mean, you have to really kind of think about it for a minute. How could somebody know that information? How could somebody know that a particle doesn't take a position until it's observed, which is what Werner Heisenberg figured out in the 20s, the 1920s, or maybe a little later than that. I can't remember the exact time frame. He doesn't even get to look at the thing he's studying. He doesn't get to put his hands on it and touch it and get close to it in that way. But he tuned his mind into this universe and into that specific thing, and was able to understand through his mind, without ever having seen or touched a subatomic particle, and without ever having been able to do any experiments with subatomic particles. He discovered something so radical and so unbelievable at the time that it would be 50 years later before science could do an experiment that absolutely confirmed that his mind reading of subatomic particles was actually spot on. It took 50 years. So if Werner Heisenberg, without ever seeing the subject that he's looking at, can figure out one of the keyest components of that subject merely with his mind, you would then agree with me that your mind is much more than a mirror to events that are passing in front of you, and that it deserves some attention. You've got a lot going for you, everybody does, with the fact that you have this mind, which is a subsequent part of the universe. It is a creation of this universe. It is tuned in varyingly to this universe. And there's all kinds of things that you can know and discover when you really have an interest in that thing. And in some, I wouldn't even say mystical, but in some way, you're tuning into the thing itself and what it's putting out, and you're able to discover it. And that's why it's important, in my opinion, for you to work with yourself, in a sense, and begin to understand that you have more going for you than you may think. Everything at the start looks like it comes from the outside and then gets to you on the inside. Later, you'll start realizing that what's on the inside expresses itself on the outside. And so our work is to do that kind of work, and to, in our case, it has to do with the markets. And do I sit in a room with a Led Zeppelin blacklight poster and some good pot and try to get close to the markets? Yes, I do. No, I don't, not really. But what I do is I do try to connect as best I can with letting the market speak to me. I don't want to say to the market what it is. I want it to say it to me. I want to try to tune in to what it's saying. And I'm not trying to make it mystical. If you want mysticism, go see what Werner Heisenberg did. That's mystical because he did it with something that he can't even see. And he was not only correct, but earth-shatteringly correct. If he can do that, and yes, he was great, then what can't we do? Can't we work and figure out the markets? And I'm inviting you to come at least take the step that I took with the square principle and see what I was able to see at that time. It was a really important discovery for me, and for everybody that has learned it, it's been a great discovery for them as well.